Welcome to another edition, a special edition of Global Conversations on Sunday, February 27th. My guest tonight is my friend and frequent contributor, Dr. Vladimir Kozin. Vladimir, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you very much. Hello, Regis.
Well, you've been doing daily updates and daily reports on what is taking place in the Ukraine after Russia's intervention or Russia's attempt to liberate Ukraine from a military that has been very aggressive and to liberate the Ukraine from Nazis, denazification. Tell me what you have to report today is in terms of updates on how this initiative is happening.
Yes, the Russian armed forces in direct unity with the People's Militia of Donbass and Donetsk People's Republic continue to the movement in the eastern direction, in the direction towards the central part of Ukraine. And the maximum distance they have traveled from the line of control or the line of disengagement separating Donbass with the rest of Ukraine, they have managed to cover by today nearly 60 kilometers from that line in the western direction. Nearly 1,000 military targets in Ukraine have been destroyed, demolished, and completely razed to the ground. Airfields, tanks, armored infantry vehicles, artillery pieces, mortars, etc. But unfortunately, the Kiev ultra-nationalist regime didn't stop fighting. And President Zelensky decided to distribute assault rifles to any person who so desired to get them, absolutely free of charge, and even not asking for their identification documents. And after that, robberies, massacres in Ukrainian capital Kiev started because looters, especially having assault rifles like Kalashnikov 47 and other modifications, they are just plundering shops, even flats, and those people who would like to defend them, they retreat and use the same kind of weaponry, like sidearms and small arms. 66 persons have been killed by these clashes. Look, it's very important to note that there are no Russian troops in the Ukrainian capital at all. The ultra-nationalists are continuing shelling of Donbass area by using tactical ballistic missile called in Russian Tochka U, or it can be translated into English as .U, Tochka U. It's a rather powerful conventional rocket, and it can travel nearly 120 kilometers. So being away from the line of control or line of disengagement, they are capable, ultra-Nazis, battalions Azov and Right Sector and Aidar and others, they are able to hit residential areas in Donbass and social infrastructure there up to now. But at the same time, many units of the regular Ukrainian armed forces surrendered. Russia did no harm to them, offered medical assistance, offering them food and potable water bottled, and give a chance to them to go absolutely free to their home places. Home places. They simply only sign a kind of declaration that they are not going to continue fighting and lay down their arms, and they are absolutely free. So, because we understand that it's very important to take care of those even military men, soldiers and officers who do not want to continue fighting. More than that, positive note, that at Chernobyl nuclear power plant, Russian soldiers, Russian officers, and friendly regular Ukrainian troops are maintaining security and protection of this very important nuclear power plant. You know, there is a sarcophagus which covered destroyed block number 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and there are some land-based fuel units to be used at the nuclear power plants. And we are happy that there is a full understanding between Russian and Ukrainian soldiers. They are in their national uniform, I'm specifically stress in Ukrainian uniform, with loops and insignia, etc., etc. And it's very important because there were rumors that ultra-Nazis wanted to destroy warehouses with fuel rods, fuel units, and poison huge area in that part of Europe, and contaminating not only Ukraine and Russia but the rest of Europe. But we managed to prevent this kind of catastrophe, quite a big and comprehensive catastrophe. At the same time, NATO member countries are still offering helping hand to this regime in Kiev that is in agony because it doesn't have any combat aviation, doesn't have heavy weapons except Tochka-U ballistic missile and some other multiple rocket launching systems. They have been hiding in the residential area. They use a kind of Shaitan mobile, some trucks, small trucks, equipped with motors and guns and high caliber automatic systems, and people have jokingly renamed them as Bandera cars, meaning Stefan Bandera, who was a puppet of the Nazi regime of Hitler, and is committed too many crimes against Poles, against Russians, and against Ukrainians who didn't want to collaborate with him. So today Zelensky gave his consent to start negotiations with the Russian team, composed of deputy foreign minister, deputy defense minister, then the presidential aide, Mr. Medinsky, in the presidential administration of the Russian Federation. And on the other side, or from Ukrainian side, the same level deputy minister for foreign affairs. They managed to start their negotiations. Up to now, when we are talking, they have not started, but there is a consensus that negotiations should start. Instead of Minsk, they relocated the place of talks near Gomel on the Belarusian side, very close to Belarusian-Ukrainian border, but on the Belarusian border. And Belarus or Belarusia and Russia guaranteed to the Ukrainian negotiating team full security and full protection. What will be the results of this talk and how long they will last? It's very difficult to predict. It's a positive factor that the Ukrainian side wanted to start these talks without any preconditions. Without any preconditions. That's very good because initially when this idea appeared on the surface, Zelensky said and his just staffers declared that Kiev should start these negotiations on the basis of Ukrainian conditions, but not Russians. No, it will not. It will not be implemented because Zelensky is not the winner in this kind of liberation military operation. He is the loser. He doesn't have army, besides some pocket of resistance, but they will be exhausted because they will not have enough ammunition and fuel, etc. But the main problem is that he will probably try to drag these negotiations indefinitely so that to buy time for regrouping, for getting extra military aid from NATO countries, and try to get more favorable conditions for Ukraine. But the Russian delegation, it's a consensus in the Russian society, amongst military experts, amongst official peoples, MPs, etc. We would like to put on the table just one and very crucial proposal: unconditional surrender of this regime in Kiev. Not ceasefire agreement, not another truce or another mediation efforts, etc. Unconditional surrender, first. Second, in this package of unconditional surrender, cessation of all hostilities from Ukrainian side. It would be difficult to reach this provision in real life. I mean, because Nazi battalions are not obeying orders coming from Kiev. Second, denazification of the Ukrainian society, demilitarization of Ukrainian society, repayment of all debts for all atrocities Kiev regime has inflicted upon civil population of Donbass, Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic for the last 8 years during 3 different armed aggressions. So probably I'm talking too much, Regis. Excuse me. Now please go ahead with your questions.
Well, thank you, Vladimir. Excellent analysis as usual. I have several questions. The United States, Germany, Australia, I believe, and Canada, and the UK have said they're going to send new arms and weapons to Ukraine. My question is, will they be able to get those arms into Ukraine now that I understand the borders are closed? Are the borders closed? And has Russia controlled the entire airspace so that new flights can come in?
No.
Plus, we know that runways, airstrips have been bombed, not the terminals, but bombed so that cargo planes cannot come in with new weapons. Is that
No.
true?
Yes, yes, it is true. And all key airfields are under Russian armed forces control. Uh, uh, Certainly, just the land borders are quite long, quite lengthy, and it sometimes probably military cargo could be delivered across the land using forests and other duck cover, but we will just pay very sharp attention what is going on, because we understand that the more weapons Kiev regime, which is near collapsing, gets from NATO countries, the longer will be this confrontation in that area of Europe. And unfortunately, Germany, that previously refused to sell any kind of arms to Kiev regime, decided to make a U-turn in its policy, and via the Netherlands and some other NATO countries will offer Kiev regime anti-tank weapons, Stinger, anti-aircraft defense missiles, even fuel and other military equipment. That is a completely unfriendly and very dangerous act by the Federal Republic of Germany. We are very much surprised. Once Germany started the Second World War by attacking Poland in 1938, and nowadays, though it is not it is not Berlin who started this third armed aggression of Kiev against Donbass, but Kiev itself. But nevertheless, Germany, like the United States and other NATO countries, are direct accomplices of Kiev atrocities and Kiev aggression against two liberated republics in Donbass. And they will also be tried by special courts that are being that will be, I think, established soon after these hostilities will wind up. These hostilities will completely stop. Regis?
Okay, the next thing I want to ask you about, and you mentioned it briefly, that the Russian Federation was arranging talks in Belarus. Zelensky initially said, yes, I'm willing to talk about it. Neutrality is on the table, yada, yada, yada. And I have heard now recently that those talks have been called off. Is that a fact?
No, no, no. There were just several refusal of Mr. Zelensky to start these talks. He initiated a kind of intermediary efforts to start these talks by using Turkish President Erdogan, then Azerbaijani President Aliyev, then some other Western leaders like Macron in France and Scholz from Germany. But when we gave a positive response to start these talks with Ukrainian officials, a special delegation sent by Kiev, they refused. They refused to start talks, and we offered Minsk as the capital of the Minsk Accord of 2015. But Zelensky said that let's go to Warsaw, to Poland. But for us, it's not fair to go to a NATO country to start these negotiations. So we insisted on Belarus or Belarus, as now it's being pronounced. The city of Gomel also was declined, and there was a compromise position uh, to sit near Pripyat River, very close to the Belarusian-Ukrainian border, but on the Belarusian territory. And President of Belarus or Belarusia, Alexander Lukashenko, also tried to mediate because our delegation that has been appointed already yesterday, as soon as this offer appeared, I mean to start talks, it already has been sent to Minsk to wait for the Ukrainian delegation. And we just announced a deadline for the Ukrainian side. Either you start negotiations with us by 15 hours or 3 p.m. Moscow time, today, Sunday, 27th of February, or these talks will never start at all. After hesitating and neglecting this kind of deadline to start talks, Lukashenko, president of Belarus, managed to persuade Kiev to send a delegation. So probably today, or if two delegations will not be able to meet tonight, late in the evening today on Sunday, so they will be definitely start negotiations tomorrow on Monday in the first half of the day, because for Ukrainian delegation it's not a problem to reach this place near the Pripyat River and in this house where the talks will commence. The problem is whether Ukrainian delegation is having mandate to start conditions for cessation of arms, for unconditional surrender of the Ukrainian armed forces and the Ukrainian regime. Or will it last quickly? Because when we gave Kiev a chance to start these negotiations, Putin decided to stop all military activity during the first reaction from Moscow in terms of this upcoming negotiations. But Kiev neglected this kind of silence, dead silence in using arms and ammunition from the Russian armed forces. And currently Moscow decided to announce that negotiations will be conducted. That's one way. And military liberation operation of Ukraine and Donbass will be continued at the same time. Because if we stop using military might to demilitarize Ukrainian society, they will regroup their armed forces, get extra money and extra arms and ammunition, and will continue fighting. But we do not want to do two things: to have this liberation operation lasted endlessly, many weeks and months, and we do not want this kind of operation that should be opposed by internationalization of involvement of some other countries. So we are against this internationalization of the conflict. So to drag more and more countries into this kind of military confrontation. The proper term is liberation of Ukraine. Regis?
Well, right now, Vladimir, it seems like Russia is almost completely isolated from the rest of the world, from the SWIFT banking system, under heavy sanctions, but the sanctions don't appear to be doing anything more to Russia or Russian individuals it's laughable that they put sanctions on President Putin and Lavrov, thinking that they have billions of dollars in real estate and money, hidden away somewhere. But
it doesn't matter, neglected.
But the that vote at the UN on yesterday was very telling, because India and the United Arab Republic and somebody else abstained. Several of them abstained.
Yes, of the UN Security Council, right.
Yeah, and that was very interesting. And I'm just wondering, do you think that China is just doing this to avoid further conflict in its part of the world? Because I have to believe that China and Russia, as President Xi said, what we have is more than an alliance and a treaty. What is your take on China's stance?
Well, look, as a great power, the Russian Federation vetoed the U.S. And other NATO countries sponsored resolution urging us to withdraw recognition of Donbass and Donetsk. They simply do not understand the realities. We vetoed it, and it's not necessary to exercise veto right on the part of the People's Republic of China. But they abstained. That's enough. That's enough. They didn't vote yes or in favor of this resolution. So it has nothing to do for us, because it was not passed at the UN Security Council. But definitely there is a huge press upon us in the Western media, in the statements of Western politicians and organizations like the European Union, NATO alliance. They are encouraging Kiev to continue fighting. That's very bad. And they, like Germany, are also accomplices of this tragedy in this part of Europe. Instead of just urging Kiev, you guys, you have to stop. Enough. Enough. What are you fighting for? Whom you would like to conquer? Russia? Impossible. Donbass? Impossible. So, instead of appealing to reason, to the head of Ukrainian leaders, they are pouring extra fuel into existing flame. So, quite very stupid and irrational policy, and very dangerous one.
Okay, so Vladimir, there's so much more that we could talk about. We'll wait for the next couple of days, but
yeah,
a lot has been made of the protests that are taking place around Russia. There was some photographs, and I don't know if they're real or not, massive protests in St. Petersburg, protests in Russia. Is this the same kind of thing that the United States Fifth Column, the CIA, MI6, the State Department, George Soros, other unfriendly NGOs, is this the same thing that they did with Navalny and the Skripals? Or is it really an uprising of Russian people who don't want this war?
It's not uprising. Regis, it's not uprising. I have seen a number of these photographs with people standing with slogans written on a paper, stop war. But I wonder, what kind of war? A war of Kiev against Donbass? It's one story. If a war of we are allegedly conducting against Ukraine, that's another story. But we are not conducting any war, because war, in its meaning, means that any attacker using war is planning to grab the territory of the opposite number and to exceed, to attach this territory into its own territory and rule this territory completely, sucking all natural resources, just using infrastructure free of charge, etc., etc. So, but if we imagine that these street meetings in St. Petersburg and in Moscow are real protesters of our liberation, they are very few. In Moscow, 150 only. In St. Petersburg, a little bit more. But look, if you weigh these figures, these numbers of personalities involved in these street manifestations, compare with the 70 million of Russians, its public opinion poll shows, 70 million Russians are against Ukrainian war against Donbass. They are against a war with Russia. Ukraine war against Russia as well. So that's totally different angle, totally different meaning. And I wonder if there are some persons who are blaming us for the aggression against Ukraine and against Kiev. But why they have been silent, showing nothing, no emotions, no attitude, when for the last 8 years Kiev wanted to torture people of Donbass, already waged two armed aggression against Donbass in 2014 and 2015. And now the third aggression started in mid-February this year, again against Donbass. Where have been those people? Why they have not raised their voice against that aggression, that war of Kiev? So betrayers, defectors.
You make a good point, and I made that point today several times in a couple of interviews, but then also in some things that I responded to on email. Where were all the outcries when the United States invaded Iraq in Gulf War I, and shock and awe in World War II? Where was the outrage when they murdered Saddam Hussein mercilessly, ruthlessly?
Yes, right.
Where was the outrage when the United States tried to bring about regime change and kill President Assad in Syria? I said, where was the outrage when the United States went and destroyed Libya and ruthlessly, violently murdered Gaddafi?
Muammar Gaddafi.
And where was the outrage after 20 years of war in Afghanistan?
In Afghanistan, right, right.
And this is really this really disturbs me. That where were these peaceful people? Where were the peace movements when, as you just said, 14,000 innocent people in the Donbass were murdered by the Ukrainian army, bombarded for 2 years? It's hypocrisy, gross hypocrisy from the West. And it's really a shame that so many peace activists have taken up the banner of the United States of America in Ukraine. It's so disturbing and it's so shameful.
Yes, it's a very limited number of people, and they do not reflect the real mood, which is overwhelmingly spread in the Russian Federation. If you look at the TV channels, at printed press, so you will see that the overwhelming majority of Russians are against Ukrainian war and Ukrainian aggression against Donbass and against us. And people, even they are probably against any kind of war at all on the globe scale. That's good. That's good. Well, we should stop all wars and never to repeat them anymore. but they are just playing games, but they offering the other side, the Kiev and NATO countries, an impression that this assistance to ultra-nationalist establishment in Kiev and Ukraine should be continued. No, we will not tolerate this, and people should stop the meetings like this. If they are not happy with what we are doing, let them go anywhere. If they do not like Mother Russia, they are free to go. We do not prevent them. If they are not happy with the Russian Federation, do not want to leave them, criticize everything, criticize everybody except themselves.
So,
Regis?
Vladimir, I have one final question.
Yeah.
How badly do you think these new sanctions and removal of Russia from the SWIFT and other banking operations, how badly will this affect Russia?
It will not badly affect the Russian Federation at all. In terms of social economic system, in terms of social welfare, education and medical care, it will not disrupt our financial system. We are just improving day in, day out. Nothing. Because our economy is well established nowadays, we have a huge gold and hard currency reserves. We have a special welfare, national welfare fund with a lot of money, both in rubles and in hard currencies. So, well, people are just moving around. I have seen many of them in the streets, and I'm going out completely freely without any just difficulties, visiting shops and the banking system. Everything is all right. And but at the same time, I'm very much upset that the European Union and NATO heralded two extra wars against us. Well, the first war, Ukrainian aggression against Donbass, that's one thing. Information war is the other thing. But I mean two extra. The first one is blocking civil aviation routes, overflight rights, civil aviation. Many countries, not only the countries you have mentioned earlier, but also Poland, 3 Baltic republics, Germany, neutral as Austria, as if it is NATO member country. So, second, it's launching a new war. It's called trade war at sea. Trade war at sea. France, whose president, Emmanuel Macron, acted like a mediator between Moscow and Kiev many times, visited our capital, talked to Mr. Putin, etc., arrested civilian Russian cargo vessel called Baltic liner, something like that. Arrested in the La Manche, in the British Channel Strait, arrested and brought to Brest-sur-Mer in France. I don't remember the exact name, on the Atlantic coast of France. Who permitted France to do so? If we respond and arrest French civilian vessels, cargo vessels carrying passenger cars, like in sense of the Russian freighter, Baltic liner, it's a huge huge misbehavior. It's a piracy at sea. Piracy at sea. Shame on you, Mr. Macron. You are also accomplice of this war of Kiev against everybody. So, these sanctions affected me personally, but only in one sense, in one case. You know, I'm frequently visiting my mother, who is 93 and she's living in Kaliningrad on the Baltic Sea coast, former Königsberg. And I originally, before that liberation operation, I moved directly, a direct flight Moscow to Kaliningrad, 1 hour and a half flying time. I crossed part of Russia, Belarus, Lithuania, and then landed at Khrabrovo Civil Airport in the Kaliningrad Oblast region. But nowadays, because Poland has banned this air traffic route, Lithuania also, I will fly to Kaliningrad via St. Petersburg, bypass it, then fly over the Baltic Sea and land at Kaliningrad city airport. And on my way back from Kaliningrad to Moscow, the same way, over Baltic Sea to St. Petersburg, probably not landing or probably minimal stopover, then land to Moscow. But I will survive, it's not a problem. I will go to my mom each month. But this kind of wars in the air and at sea, it's a kind of fascist method of preventing people to go and to see their relatives and friends.
Yeah, well, this whole thing about banning air traffic, if Russia banned all air traffic, as you mentioned the other day, it would not only force these airlines, all of these airlines, into bankruptcy, it would affect the entire Western economy, including the United States. This is insanity. Vladimir, yeah, I want to thank you so much for your time again. I keep reading your reports every day, and thank you for keeping pace with all of this and helping us spread this word on the show.
Yes, my pleasure, Regis. God bless you all. Take care. Try to rest a little bit because I understand fatigue that just fell upon you, and everything will be fine. But let's continue our talks. They're very important to open eyes of the other people who are turned their eyes blind and their ears deaf. Goodbye.